Get out, Zaria, you're a disgrace. David's venomous shout pierced the quiet Houston suburb. Zaria Thompson, a black woman 7 months pregnant, stood trembling on the lawn, her 100-kilo frame heavy with child. David, her white husband, his face cold, clung to Emily, his white secretary, on the porch. I don't know why he chose you, Emily sneered, her laugh cutting deep. Tears streamed down Zaria's face as neighbors peeked through the curtains. Across the street, Marcus Reed, a white billionaire, gripped the wheel of his black Bentley, his heart aching as he watched Zaria's humiliation. Would she crumble under their cruelty? Or could a hidden spark ignite her fight? Who was the man in the shadows, and what secrets tied him to her? Follow Zaria's story to uncover her triumph. Rate this intro: 1, great, or 0, not great. Predict her path. Will she rise or fall? The air in Zaria Thompson's Houston home hung thick with silence, broken only by the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. Inside the cramped living room, the scent of stale coffee clung to the walls, a bitter reminder of sleepless nights. Zaria, a black woman 7 months pregnant, sat on the edge of the sagging couch, her 100-kilo frame sinking into the worn cushions. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, fingers tracing the taut skin where her unborn child stirred, a quiet promise in a world that felt increasingly cruel. Her dark eyes, once bright with dreams, now carried a heaviness, shadowed by the weight of her husband's disdain. Every creak of the house seemed to echo his absence, his betrayal. David, her white husband, had left before dawn, his briefcase slamming shut like a judge's gavel. Zaria knew where he'd gone: another late-night work event with Emily, his white secretary, whose laughter had become a blade slicing through their marriage. She could still feel the sting of his words from the night before, hurled like stones. "You're letting yourself go, Zaria. It's pathetic." The memory burned, a fresh wound layered over months of insults. Her heart thudded, a mix of shame and defiance as she tried to push the hurt down, to shield the baby within her from the chaos outside. The front door swung open, shattering her thoughts. David stormed in, his sharp jawline set in a scowl, his blue eyes glinting with contempt. Behind him trailed Emily, her pale skin glowing under the morning light filtering through the windows, her presence a deliberate taunt. Zaria's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the couch's armrest. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but her body, heavy, unyielding, kept her rooted. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as David's gaze raked over her. "Look at you," he spat, his voice low but venomous, "sitting there like a burden. I can't take this anymore." Zaria's chest tightened, each word a punch to her soul. She opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, but the words choked in her throat, drowned by the shame that had become her shadow. Emily stepped forward, her lips curling into a smirk that cut deeper than David's words. "He deserves better than this," she said, her tone dripping with pity that wasn't pity at all. "You're holding him back, Zaria. Everyone sees it." Zaria's eyes stung, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not now, not in front of them. Her hands pressed harder against her belly, as if to protect her child from the cruelty filling the room. The neighbors outside, their silhouettes visible through the sheer curtains, were no doubt watching, their whispers already forming a chorus of judgment. Zaria felt their eyes, felt the weight of their stares, but it was David's rejection that carved the deepest scar. She had loved him once, believed in his promises, but now those promises lay shattered, scattered like the grocery bags she'd carried home yesterday, now forgotten on the kitchen counter. "Why are you even here?" David continued, his voice rising, each syllable a lash. "You're dragging me down with you." The accusation landed like a blow, and Zaria's heart raced, a frantic rhythm of pain and anger. She wanted to scream, to tell him he was the one breaking their vows, flaunting his affair with Emily in their home. But her voice, once strong and sure, had been silenced by months of his relentless criticism. Her pregnancy, meant to be a joy, had become a battlefield, her body a target for his disgust. Emily leaned closer to David, her hand resting possessively on his arm, a silent claim. "You should just leave," she said, her words sharp, meant to wound. "You're not wanted here." Zarya's vision blurred, the room spinning as her emotions churned. Grief, humiliation, and a spark of something fiercer, something unbroken. She thought of her baby, the life inside her, and a quiet resolve began to take root. A whisper that she was more than this moment, more than their scorn. Outside, beyond the open front door, the suburban street lay quiet, the world unaware of the storm within these walls. But one pair of eyes saw it all. Marcus Reed, a white billionaire whose wealth masked a heart still tethered to a college love, sat in his black Bentley, parked discreetly across the street. His green eyes, usually calm and calculating, burned with a mix of sorrow and fury as he watched Zaria's pain unfold. He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening, every instinct urging him to intervene. But he held back, knowing this wasn't the moment. Not yet. Zaria didn't see him, didn't know he was there. But Marcus saw her, saw the woman he'd once loved under a Texas moon, the woman whose strength he still believed in. Zaria's mind flashed to memories of better days, when her laughter filled rooms, when her dark skin glowed with confidence, when she walked with a purpose that no one could dim. She'd been a data analyst, sharp and driven, her curves a source of pride, not shame. But David had chipped away at that Zaria, replacing her confidence with doubt, her joy with despair. Now, as he stood with Emily, their unity a mockery of the life they'd built, Zaria felt a flicker of the woman she used to be. It was faint, buried beneath layers of hurt, but it was there, a stubborn ember refusing to die. She rose from the couch, her movements slow, deliberate, her belly a heavy anchor grounding her to this moment. "You don't get to decide my worth," she said, her voice trembling but clear, surprising even herself. David's eyes widened, a flicker of unease crossing his face, but he quickly masked it with a sneer. "Worth?" he scoffed. "You're nothing but a weight around my neck." Emily laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that echoed in Zaria's ears. But it didn't break her. Not this time. Zaria's gaze darted to the window, where the shadows of neighbors lingered, their judgment a silent chorus. She felt exposed, raw, but also alive in a way she hadn't in months. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling a gentle kick from her unborn child, a reminder of why she couldn't surrender. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the life she carried, the future she owed her son. She took a step toward the door, her heart pounding, not knowing where she'd go, but knowing she couldn't stay in this house, this prison of David's making. Marcus, still watching from his Bentley, felt a surge of pride amidst his pain. He saw the spark in Zaria's eyes, the same fire he'd fallen for years ago when they dreamed together under starlit skies. He wanted to rush to her, to pull her from this nightmare, but he knew she needed to take the first step herself. His fingers twitched, itching to act, but he waited, his resolve hardening. He would be there when she was ready, when the moment came to offer her a way out. Zaria paused at the threshold, her breath ragged, her tears drying on her cheeks. She looked back at David and Emily, their faces a blur of contempt, and felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just pain now, it was defiance, a quiet vow that she would not let them define her. She stepped outside, the morning air cool against her skin, and stood on the porch, her silhouette framed against the house that no longer felt like home. The neighbors' stares burned, but Zaria held her head high, her heart whispering a promise. She would rise again, for herself and her child. Across the street, Marcus leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving her. He saw not just a woman broken by betrayal, but a warrior poised to reclaim her strength. The road ahead would be long, but he knew Zaria was capable of more than she realized. As she stood there, alone but unbowed, the first chapter of her redemption began to unfold, a story of pain, resilience, and a fire waiting to blaze. Zaria Thompson stood alone on the porch of her Houston home, the echo of David's cruel words still ringing in her ears. The morning air carried the faint scent of jasmine from a neighbor's garden, a cruel contrast to the bitterness in her heart. Her hands cradled her swollen belly, where her unborn son kicked softly, a reminder of the life she was fighting for. Inside, the house felt like a tomb, its walls holding memories of a love that had once burned bright but now lay in ashes. Zara's dark eyes, clouded with grief, traced the cracks in the porch's wooden planks, each one mirroring the fractures in her soul. She had stepped out to escape David and Emily's venom, but the weight of their betrayal clung to her like a second skin. She turned her gaze inward, her mind slipping back to the days when love had felt like a promise kept. 5 years ago, Houston's tech conference had been a whirlwind of lights and ambition. Zaria, then a data analyst with a sharp mind and unapologetic confidence, had walked through the crowded halls, her black skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, her curves a badge of pride. She'd felt alive, her laughter drawing eyes, her presence commanding respect. That's when David had found her, his white skin flushed with charm, his blue eyes sparkling as he approached her booth. "Zaria, you're a vision," he'd said, his voice smooth as honey. "I've never met anyone who lights up a room like you." Her heart had fluttered, unused to such bold flattery, and she'd let herself believe he saw her, truly saw her. Their romance had been a fever dream, a rush of stolen kisses and late-night talks about dreams bigger than the Texas sky. David, a rising sales executive, had painted a future where they'd conquer the world together. "You're my everything," he'd whispered on their wedding day, a small affair in a Houston chapel, his hands warm against hers. Zaria had believed him, her heart swelling with the certainty that love could anchor her through any storm. She'd been fearless then, her dark skin a canvas of pride, her laughter a melody that filled their tiny apartment. But that Zaria felt like a ghost now, a memory she could barely grasp as she stood on the porch, her body heavy with child and sorrow. The shift had come slowly, like a tide eroding ashore. David's compliments turned to critiques, subtle at first, then sharp as knives. "You're eating too much, Zaria," he'd say, eyeing her plate with disgust. "You used to care about how you looked." Each word chipped away at her confidence, planting seeds of doubt that grew into thorns. When she told him she was pregnant, his smile had been forced, his eyes distant. "That's great," he'd said, but the warmth was gone. He'd pushed her to quit her job, his voice cloaked in concern. "You need to focus on the baby, on us." Zaria, desperate to please, had agreed, trading her office for the confines of their home, where loneliness became her only companion. Isolation wrapped around her like a shroud. Without her job, her days blurred into a haze of cooking, cleaning, and waiting for David, who came home later each night, his clothes carrying the faint scent of Emily's perfume. Zaria's world shrank to the four walls of their house, her only solace found in the kitchen, where she turned to food to dull the ache. The pounds piled on, her body changing in ways she couldn't control, her 100-kilo frame a stark contrast to the woman David had once called a vision. She'd catch her reflection in the mirror, her dark eyes searching for the Zaria she'd lost. But all she saw was shame, a shame David nurtured with every glance, every sigh. Emily's presence had become a constant wound. David no longer hid his preference, bringing her to company events, their laughter a public declaration of Zaria's irrelevance. "Emily's sharp, Zaria," he'd said once, his tone cutting. "She fits in with the team." The implication was clear. Zaria didn't. She'd overheard him at a dinner, boasting to colleagues about Emily's charm, her poise while Zaria sat at home, her belly growing, her heart shrinking. Each slight was a stone added to the weight she carried, not just in her body but in her spirit. She felt like a stranger in her own life, her confidence buried beneath layers of hurt, her dreams reduced to whispers. Yet in the quiet moments, Zaria felt her son's movements, a gentle nudge that stirred something deep within her. She'd rest her hands on her belly, whispering to him, "You're my reason, little one." Those words were a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't just David's discarded wife, but a mother, a woman with a purpose. The pain of his betrayal burned, but it also sparked a flicker of defiance, a refusal to let his cruelty define her. She thought of her grandmother, a woman of quiet strength who'd raised her to believe in her worth. "You're a star, Zaria," she'd said, her voice warm with conviction. "Don't let anyone dim your light." Those words echoed now, faint but persistent, urging Zaria to hold on. Outside, the neighborhood stirred, children's voices drifting from a nearby yard. a cruel reminder of the life Zariah had envisioned for her child, a life filled with love, not scorn. She closed her eyes, trying to shut out the memory of David's arm around Emily, their united front a mockery of the vows he'd made. Her chest ached, a raw, pulsing pain that threatened to swallow her whole. But beneath it, something else stirred, a quiet anger, a resolve to protect her son from the man David had become. She didn't know how, didn't know where to begin, but the thought of her child gave her strength, a reason to fight. Marcus Reed, unseen in his Bentley across the street, watched the house with a heavy heart. He'd returned to Houston for business, but fate had led him to this moment, to Zaria's pain. He remembered her as she'd been in college, vibrant, fearless, her laughter a melody that had captured his heart. Their love had been real, but his family's wealth and expectations had torn them apart, sending him to Europe while she stayed behind. Now seeing her like this, broken by a man unworthy of her, Marcus felt a surge of guilt and determination. He couldn't undo the past, but he could offer her a future, if she'd let him. Zaria took a shaky breath, her hands still on her belly, feeling her son's kick like a heartbeat of hope. She didn't know Marcus was there, didn't know anyone saw her pain, but she felt a shift within her. The woman she'd been, the one who'd danced through life with confidence, wasn't gone, just buried. David's words, Emily's sneers, they hurt, but they couldn't erase her. She opened her eyes, the morning light catching the tears on her cheeks, and whispered to herself, "I'm still here." It was a vow, fragile but fierce, a promise to her son and herself that she would find a way to shine again. Zaria Thompson lingered on the porch, the echo of her own whispered vow. "I'm still here," fading into the humid Houston air. The house behind her stood silent, its walls a cage for memories she could no longer bear. Her hands rested on her swollen belly, the gentle kick of her unborn son a lifeline pulling her back from the edge of despair. Her dark eyes, raw from tears, scanned the quiet street, where the world seemed to move on, oblivious to the storm raging within her. David's cruelty and Emily's sneers had carved fresh wounds, but Zaria felt something else stirring, a quiet, stubborn refusal to let them break her completely. She clutched that spark, fragile as it was, and stepped back inside, her heart heavy but unbroken. The living room, dim despite the morning light, felt like a battlefield littered with the wreckage of her marriage. Zaria sank into a chair, her 100-key frame pressing against the creaking wood, her breath shallow as she fought to steady herself. The scent of David's cologne lingered, a bitter reminder of the man who'd once held her close but now tore her apart. Her mind churned, replaying the moments that had led to this unraveling. She'd given up her career, her confidence, her very sense of self to please him, yet it was never enough. The sting of his rejection burned deeper than ever, a wound that pulsed with every heartbeat, threatening to drown her in shame. The sound of tires crunching gravel snapped her from her thoughts. A sleek black car pulled into the driveway. David's. Her stomach twisted, dread coiling like a snake. The door swung open, and David strode in, his white skin flushed with irritation, his blue eyes glinting with something darker than anger. Emily followed, her pale features sharp with smug satisfaction, her steps deliberate, as if she owned the space Zaria had once called home. The air thickened, charged with unspoken hostility, and Zariah's fingers tightened on the chair's armrests, her nails digging into the fabric. She wanted to disappear, to shield her child from the venom she knew was coming, but there was nowhere to hide. "You're still here," David's voice cut through the silence, sharp and mocking. "I thought I made it clear you're not wanted." Each word was a dagger, slicing through the fragile armor Zaria had tried to build. Her chest ached, a raw, throbbing pain that made it hard to breathe. She opened her mouth to respond, to reclaim some shred of dignity, but the words caught in her throat, choked by the weight of her humiliation. Emily stepped closer, her lips curling into a smile that was all teeth, no warmth. "You're just dragging this out," she said, her voice low, venomous. "He deserves someone who can keep up. Not this." Her gaze raked over Zaria, lingering on her pregnant belly, her judgment a silent scream. Zaria's heart pounded, a frantic rhythm of shame and fury. She felt the eyes of the neighborhood, imagined their whispers weaving a net of pity around her. Her black skin, once a source of pride, now felt like a target, exposed under Emily's scorn and David's disgust. She wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong, that she was more than the body they mocked, more than the wife they discarded. But the weight of their words pressed down, heavy as the child she carried. And for a moment, she wondered if they were right, if she was the failure David claimed her to be. "I gave you everything," Zaria whispered, her voice trembling, barely audible. "I gave up my job, my dreams for you." The confession spilled out, raw and unfiltered, a plea for the man David used to be. His face twisted, a flash of guilt quickly buried under a sneer. "Everything?" he scoffed. "You gave me excuses, Zaria. You let yourself fall apart, and now I'm stuck cleaning up your mess." The cruelty in his tone was a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. Emily's laugh, sharp and cutting, filled the room, a sound that clawed at Zaria's soul. "You're not even worth his time anymore," she said, her words dripping with malice, as if Zaria's very existence offended her. Outside, the world continued its quiet rhythm, birds chirping, a distant lawnmower humming. But inside, Zaria felt like she was drowning. Her hands pressed against her belly, feeling her son's faint movements, and a surge of protectiveness cut through her pain. This wasn't just about her anymore. She couldn't let David's betrayal poison the life she was bringing into the world. Her tears fell silently, but beneath them a fire flickered, small but fierce. She thought of her grandmother, whose voice had been a beacon in her childhood. "You're a star, Zaria. Don't let anyone dim you." Those words, long buried, rose now, a whisper of strength in the chaos. Across the street, Marcus Reed sat in his black Bentley, his green eyes locked on the house. His heart ached as he watched the scene unfold through the open window, Zaria's pain a mirror to the love he'd never stopped carrying. He remembered her college days, her laughter like music, her spirit a flame that had warmed his coldest nights. Their love had been torn apart by his family's wealth and expectations, but seeing her now, broken by a man who didn't deserve her, reignited his resolve. He wanted to storm in, to shield her from David's cruelty, but he knew she needed to find her own strength first. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel, his silence a promise to be there when she was ready. Zaria's gaze drifted to the floor, where a single grocery bag lay, a relic of her attempt to hold their life together. She'd bought David's favorite coffee, hoping to please him, but now it felt like a symbol of her futility. Her heart screamed to fight back, to tell David he was the one who'd failed her, but fear held her tongue. What if she was wrong? What if she truly was the burden he claimed? The doubt gnawed at her, but her son's kick, a sharp, insistent nudge, pulled her back. "I'm here for you," she whispered to her unborn child, her voice steadying. "I won't let him break us." She stood, her movements slow but deliberate, her 100-kilo frame a testament to the life she carried, not the shame David imposed. "You don't get to erase me," she said louder now, her eyes locking with David's. His sneer faltered, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. But Emily stepped forward, her voice icy. "You're nothing, Zaria. You never were." The words stung, but Zaria held her ground, her hands protective over her belly. She felt the weight of her pain, but also the strength of her son, her grandmother's words, her own buried fire. Marcus, watching from his car, saw the shift in Zaria's posture, the way her shoulders squared, her chin lifted. It was the Zaria he'd loved, the one who'd faced the world with courage. He knew this moment was hers, not his to claim, but he vowed to be her anchor when the time came. Zaria took a step toward the door, her heart pounding, her tears drying. She didn't know where she'd go, but she knew she couldn't stay. Not in this house, not in this life. As she crossed the threshold, the morning light caught her black skin, a fleeting glow that hinted at the woman she'd reclaim. Zaria Thompson stepped away from the house, the sting of David's betrayal still searing her heart. The Houston street hummed with distant life, cars rolling by, a dog barking. But to Zaria, it felt like a void, swallowing her whole. Her 100-kilo frame, heavy with her unborn son, moved slowly, each step a battle against the weight of shame that clung to her. Her dark eyes, swollen from tears, scanned the empty sidewalk, searching for a direction, a purpose. Her hands rested on her belly, feeling the faint kick of her child, a quiet anchor in the storm of her emotions. She'd left the house behind, but David's words, "You're nothing," echoed, a relentless ghost haunting her every thought. Yet beneath the pain, a flicker of defiance burned, a whisper that she was more than the broken woman he saw. She found herself at a small supermarket, the fluorescent lights harsh against her tear-streaked face. The aisles blurred as she pushed a cart, her fingers trembling around the handle. The mundane act of shopping, picking up bread, milk, a jar of peanut butter, felt like a lifeline, a way to hold on to normalcy when her world had crumbled. But her heart was a battlefield, torn between despair and a stubborn refusal to surrender. She could still feel Emily's smirk, the way her white skin seemed to glow with victory, and David's cold gaze, stripping her of worth. Her chest ached, a raw, pulsing wound, but her son's movements kept her grounded, a reminder that she wasn't alone, not entirely. A voice broke through her haze, soft but familiar, like a melody from a forgotten song. "Zaria." She turned, her breath catching as she met the green eyes of Marcus Reed, her college sweetheart, now a white billionaire in a tailored suit that spoke of a life worlds apart from hers. His face, etched with concern, was a jolt to her heart, stirring memories she'd buried deep. She wanted to run, to hide the wreck she'd become, but his gaze held her, warm and unwavering. "I saw what happened," he said, his voice low, thick with empathy. "I saw David and that woman. I'm so sorry." Zaria's throat tightened, shame flooding her as she imagined how she must look to him, pregnant, heavy, broken. But Marcus's eyes held no judgment, only a pain that mirrored her own. They moved to a quiet corner of the supermarket, away from curious shoppers. Zaria clutched the cart, her knuckles whitening, her emotions a tangle of fear and longing. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with vulnerability. Marcus leaned closer, his presence a steady anchor. "I came back to Houston for business," he said, "but I couldn't stop thinking about you. When I saw you outside your house, I knew I had to do something." His words pierced her, a mix of comfort and terror. She wanted to believe him, to trust the man who'd once loved her, but David's cruelty had taught her to doubt kindness, to fear it was a trap. Her mind flashed to a night long ago, under a Texas moon, when she and Marcus had danced on a campus lawn, their bodies swaying to music only they could hear. She'd been fearless then, her black skin glowing with confidence, her laughter a defiance of the world's expectations. Marcus had looked at her like she was the only star in the sky, his green eyes promising a future they'd never had. But his family's wealth had pulled him away, sending him to Europe, while Zaria, bound by her working-class roots, stayed behind. The memory was a knife, cutting through her pain to reveal a truth. She'd been enough once, and maybe she could be again. "I don't know how to keep going," Zaria confessed, her voice cracking, tears threatening to spill. "David's taken everything. My job, my confidence, my home." The admission felt like peeling back her skin, exposing the raw hurt beneath. Marcus's jaw tightened, anger flickering in his eyes, but his voice remained gentle. "He hasn't taken everything," he said. "He can't take your strength, Zaria. I see it, even now." His words were a lifeline, pulling her from the abyss, but fear clung to her, whispering that she'd fail, that David would find out and crush her further. Marcus leaned forward, his hand hovering near hers, not touching, but close enough to feel his warmth. "Let me help you," he said, his tone earnest, urgent. "I want to fund a project for you, a wellness platform for Black women, something you can run from anywhere. You can call it Zaria's Radiance. You've always had a gift for lifting others up." Zaria's heart stuttered, hope and doubt warring within her. She'd once dreamed of inspiring others, of using her voice to empower, but David's insults had silenced that dream. Could she reclaim it? The idea felt like a leap across a chasm, thrilling but terrifying. "What if I fail?" she whispered, her voice raw with fear. "What if David finds out?" Marcus's eyes softened, but his resolve was steel. "You won't fail," he said, "and I'll make sure it's safe. We'll keep it secret, use secure channels. You're not alone anymore, Zaria." His certainty was a balm, soothing the jagged edges of her doubt. She thought of her son, the life she owed him, and felt a spark ignite, a desire to fight, not just for survival, but for a life worth living. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "You're a star, Zaria. Don't let anyone dim you." The words felt closer now, a call to action. Zaria's hands trembled as she gripped the cart, her emotions a storm of hope and terror. She saw herself in Marcus's eyes, not the broken woman David had made her, but the Zaria who danced under the moon, who'd believed in her own power. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "After all these years, why care?" Marcus's gaze held hers, raw and unguarded. "Because I never stopped caring," he said. "I loved you then, and I see the same fire in you now. You deserve to shine, Zaria." The confession hit her like a wave, stirring feelings she'd thought long dead. Hope, possibility, the ghost of love. She took a shaky breath, her son's kick a quiet reminder of her purpose. "Okay," she said, her voice steadier, a vow to herself as much as to Marcus. "I'll try." It was a small step, but it felt monumental, like the first note of a song she'd forgotten how to sing. Marcus smiled, a flicker of pride in his eyes, and handed her a burner phone. "For our plans," he said. "You're not alone anymore." Zaria clutched the phone, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration, the weight of her pain still there, but lighter, pierced by a spark of hope. Outside the supermarket, Marcus returned to his Bentley, his mind racing with plans to protect her. He saw not just the woman he'd loved, but a warrior ready to rise. Zaria stepped into the sunlight, the world no longer a void but a canvas, waiting for her to paint her redemption. Her son's kick echoed her resolve, a promise that she'd fight, for him, for herself, for the woman she was meant to be. Zaria Thompson gripped the burner phone Marcus had given her, its weight a secret talisman against the darkness that had swallowed her life. In the dim light of a Houston motel room, where the hum of a faulty air conditioner underscored her solitude, she sat on a lumpy bed, her 100-key frame heavy with her unborn son. Her dark eyes, once dulled by despair, now flickered with a fragile hope, kindled by Marcus's belief in her. Her fingers traced the phone's edges, her heart racing with the possibility of Zaria's radiance, the wellness platform she was building in secret. Each message from Marcus, encrypted and fleeting, was a lifeline, pulling her from the abyss of David's cruelty. But fear gnawed at her, a relentless whisper that her husband would discover her plan, that her defiance would cost her everything. Her days were a tightrope walk between dread and determination. By day, Zaria hid in the motel, her world reduced to a laptop screen where she poured her heart into Zaria's radiance. She crafted videos for Black women, her voice trembling but earnest, urging them to embrace their bodies, their strength. Learning to navigate social media was a battle. Hashtags baffled her, and a harsh review from an early client stung like a slap. "Your advice feels fake." The words echoed David's insults, threatening to unravel her fragile confidence. But Zaria pressed on, her son's gentle kicks a reminder of why she fought. She studied marketing tutorials late into the night, her eyes burning, her resolve hardening. Each new follower, each message of gratitude from a woman who felt seen, was a brick in the foundation of her new life. By night, she braced for David's calls, his voice a blade through the phone. "You're still a burden," he'd sneer, refusing her money for groceries, his affair with Emily no longer a secret. Zaria's heart twisted, the pain of his betrayal a constant ache. But she hid her plans, her voice steady as she lied. "I'm managing." She saved every dollar from Zaria's radiance in a secret account, each deposit a step toward freedom. Her black skin, once a source of shame under David's gaze, began to feel like armor, a testament to her resilience. She'd whisper to her son, "We're building something, just you and me." Her voice a vow, her fear tempered by a growing fire within. The tipping point came at a company dinner, a glitzy affair in a Houston ballroom where David's colleagues mingled under chandeliers. Zaria, 8.5 months pregnant, felt like an outsider. Her presence, a formality David barely tolerated. She stood alone, her hands cradling her belly, her dark eyes scanning the room for a place to belong. David, in a sharp suit, laughed with Emily at a table of executives, their ease a stark contrast to Zaria's isolation. She caught snippets of their conversation, David's voice carrying over the clink of glasses. "Once the baby's born, I'm done with her. She's a weight I can't carry anymore." The words landed like a fist, knocking the breath from Zaria's lungs. Her heart pounded, a storm of hurt and rage swirling within her. She moved toward him, her steps heavy but resolute, her son's kicks urging her forward. The room seemed to fade, the chatter a distant hum as she faced David. "You think I'm a weight?" she said, her voice low but cutting, trembling with a fury she'd suppressed too long. David's blue eyes widened, caught off guard, but he recovered with a sneer. "You heard me," he said. "You're holding me back, Zaria. Look at you." Emily's laugh, sharp and cruel, sliced through the air, her pale face smug. "She's right where she belongs. Nowhere," she said, her words a venomous echo of David's disdain. Zaria's chest heaved, her emotions a wildfire. Pain, shame, but above all, defiance. "I'm not nothing," she said, her voice rising, steady now, each word a reclamation of her worth. "I'm a mother, a woman, and I'm done letting you tear me down." The room hushed, eyes turning to her, but Zaria didn't care. Her son's presence within her was a shield, his life a reason to stand tall. David's face twisted, anger flaring, but before he could respond, a sharp pain ripped through Zaria's abdomen, stealing her breath. She gasped, clutching her belly, her vision blurring as another contraction hit. Too soon, too fierce. Panic surged, her heart racing as she stumbled, her hands gripping a nearby table. "Something's wrong," she whispered, fear flooding her as she thought of her son. The room spun, faces blurring into a haze of shock and whispers. Marcus, who'd been watching from a corner, having followed her to ensure her safety, pushed through the crowd, his green eyes wide with alarm. "Zaria!" he called, his voice cutting through her panic. He reached her, his hands steadying her as she doubled over, pain searing through her. "Hold on," he said, his tone urgent but calm. "I'm getting you to the hospital." Zaria clung to his arm, her fear a tidal wave, but his presence was an anchor. The world narrowed to the rhythm of her breaths, the pain in her body, and the desperate need to protect her son. Marcus guided her out, ignoring David's stunned silence, Emily's shocked stare. In the back of his Bentley, speeding toward the hospital, Zaria's tears fell, not from shame but from terror for her child. "Please," she whispered, her hands on her belly, "be okay." Marcus's hand found hers, his voice soft but firm. "You're strong, Zaria. You both are." The hospital lights were blinding, the beeping monitors a frantic soundtrack to her fear. Zaria's contractions came fast, each one a battle she wasn't sure she could win. Nurses bustled around her, their voices a blur, but Marcus stayed, his presence a quiet strength. Hours blurred into a haze of pain and hope, until finally a cry pierced the air. Her son, Isaiah, a healthy brown-skinned boy, born premature but fierce. Zaria sobbed, relief flooding her as she held him, his tiny hand curling around her finger. His dark eyes, so like hers, were a mirror of her resilience, a promise fulfilled. David never came. A nurse handed Zaria a note, his handwriting cold and curt. "Handle it yourself." The words stung, but they didn't break her. Not anymore. She looked at Isaiah, his small chest rising and falling, and felt a fire ignite within her. This was her moment, her line in the sand. She wasn't David's victim anymore. She was Isaiah's mother, a woman with a future to claim. Marcus, standing by the door, met her eyes, his pride unspoken but clear. Zaria clutched her son, her heart swelling with a love fiercer than her pain, knowing this was the turning point, the moment she chose to rise. Zaria Thompson held her newborn son Isaiah close to her chest, his tiny breaths a soft rhythm against the sterile hum of the Houston hospital room. The weight of him, so small yet so profound, anchored her to a new reality, one where David's cold note and cruel absence no longer held power. Her dark eyes, still raw from tears of relief, traced Isaiah's brown-skinned face, his delicate features a mirror of her own resilience. The pain of the past months, David's insults, Emily's sneers, lingered like a bruise, but holding Isaiah, Zaria felt a shift within her, a quiet awakening. Her heart, once a battlefield of shame and fear, now beat with a fierce, protective love. She whispered to her son, "You're my light," her voice trembling with a vow to be the mother he deserved, to be the woman she'd forgotten she could be. The hospital walls, stark and clinical, faded as Zaria's focus narrowed to Isaiah's warmth. Her 100-kilo frame, once a source of David's scorn, felt like a fortress now, strong enough to shield her son from the world's cruelty. She'd survived the premature labor, the searing pain of betrayal, and emerged with this miracle in her arms. Yet beneath the relief, fear flickered. Fear of facing the world alone, of failing Isaiah, of David's shadow still lurking. Her fingers brushed Isaiah's soft curls, and she pushed the fear down, letting love take its place. She wasn't the broken woman David had tried to make her. She was Zaria, a mother, a survivor, and she was ready to rebuild. Discharged from the hospital, Zaria moved into a modest motel, its faded wallpaper and creaking bed a far cry from the home she'd lost. Marcus, ever her silent guardian, ensured she had everything she needed: diapers, formula, a laptop to keep Zaria's radiance alive. The burner phone he'd given her buzzed with his messages, each one a reminder that she wasn't alone. Zaria poured her heart into the platform, recording videos in the motel's dim light, her voice raw but authentic as she spoke to Black women about self-love. "Your worth isn't your weight," she'd say, her dark eyes shining with conviction. The words were for her audience but also for herself, a mantra to heal the wounds David had left. Her early efforts stumbled. Social media algorithms baffled her, and a scathing comment from a viewer, "This feels like a pity party," cut deep, echoing David's taunts. Zaria's confidence wavered, her hands trembling as she stared at the screen, doubt whispering that she wasn't enough. But Isaiah's coos from his crib pulled her back, his tiny presence a spark that reignited her resolve. She stayed up late, studying marketing strategies, her eyes burning from exhaustion but alight with purpose. Slowly, her videos gained traction, women responding to her honesty, her story of surviving betrayal. Each new follower was a victory. Each dollar earned a brick in her path to freedom. Zariah's body began to change, not out of shame, but out of love. She started yoga in the motel room, her movements slow but deliberate, each stretch a reclaiming of her strength. She cooked fresh meals, bright salads, hearty grains, nourishing herself for Isaiah's sake. Her black skin, once a target of David's disgust, glowed with a radiance she hadn't seen in years. She'd catch her reflection in the motel's cracked mirror, her dark eyes no longer clouded but fierce, her curves a testament to her journey. The transformation wasn't about weight, it was about power, about rediscovering the woman who'd once danced under a Texas moon with Marcus, fearless and free. One evening Marcus visited, his green eyes soft with pride as he watched Zaria cradle Isaiah. The motel's fluorescent light cast shadows on his tailored suit, but his presence felt like sunlight. "You're doing it, Zaria," he said, his voice warm. "You're building something incredible." Zariah's heart fluttered, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, a ghost of the love they'd shared. She hesitated, then asked, "Why are you helping me, Marcus, after all this time?" He paused, his gaze steady. "Because I see you, the real you, the woman who lit up my world in college. You're still here." His words stirred a warmth she'd thought lost, but fear held her back. She was still David's wife, still raw from betrayal. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Marcus sat across from her, his expression serious. "There's something you need to know," he said. "Your grandmother believed in me when I was just starting. She met me at a career workshop during our college days, saw my drive, and invested a small sum in my company." Zaria's breath caught, her grandmother's voice echoing. "You're a star, Zaria," Marcus continued. That investment grew. It's worth millions now, and it's yours. Zaria's eyes widened, disbelief warring with hope. Millions, she whispered, her voice trembling. David knew, Marcus said, his jaw tightening. He kept it from you, but it's your inheritance. The truth hit like a thunderbolt, shattering the last of David's lies. Zaria's heart raced, a mix of fury at her husband's deceit and awe at her grandmother's foresight. She wasn't just a mother fighting for scraps. She was a millionaire, a woman with power she'd never dreamed of. Tears welled, not of pain but of gratitude, for the grandmother who'd seen her worth, for Marcus who'd protected it. I don't know how to process this, she said, her voice breaking. Marcus smiled, gentle but firm. You don't have to yet. Just know you're free now, Zaria. You can build the life you want. With her newfound wealth and Zaria's radiance thriving, Zaria left the motel for a sleek Houston loft, its floor-to-ceiling windows opening to a city that felt alive with possibility. She furnished it simply, a crib for Isaiah, a desk for her work, but each piece was a declaration of independence. Her platform exploded, Black women across the country sharing their stories, inspired by Zaria's raw honesty. She'd record videos with Isaiah asleep in her arms, her voice steady now. You are enough right now. The words were a mirror, reflecting the woman she was becoming, strong, radiant, unapologetic. David's absence became a distant ache, his betrayal a shadow she no longer feared. She'd heard he was still with Emily, his life unraveling as his colleagues whispered about his cruelty. Zaria felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that she was free. She looked at Isaiah, his brown skin glowing under the loft's soft lights, and felt a love so fierce it drowned out her pain. Her heart, once a battlefield, was now a sanctuary, filled with purpose. She'd whispered to him at night, "We're unstoppable, you and me," her voice a vow to never let anyone dim her light again. Marcus, ever watchful, sent messages of encouragement, his faith in her a steady flame. Zaria felt a pull toward him, a rekindling of something old and true, but she held back, needing to stand on her own first. She'd stand at her loft's window, the Houston skyline sparkling, and see her reflection, not a victim, but a warrior. Her black skin, her curves, her strength. They were hers, not David's to judge. She was Zaria, mother, creator, survivor, and she was ready to shine. Zaria Thompson stood at the edge of her Houston loft's balcony, the city's skyline a glittering testament to the life she'd carved from the ashes of betrayal. Her dark eyes, once clouded by shame, now sparkled with a fierce, unyielding pride. Isaiah, her brown-skinned son, slept soundly in his crib inside, his gentle snores a melody that anchored her heart. The success of Zaria's radiance, her wellness platform for Black women, had transformed her into a beacon of hope, her voice resonating across screens, empowering thousands. Yet beneath her newfound strength, the scars of David's cruelty lingered, a quiet ache that surfaced in the stillness of the night. Her black skin, glowing under the moonlight, was a canvas of resilience, but her heart still trembled at the thought of facing the man who tried to break her. Today was the grand opening of the first Zaria's Radiance Wellness Center, a sleek Houston building buzzing with anticipation. Zaria moved through the crowd, her presence commanding, her curves a proud declaration of self-love. Her dark hair framed her face, her smile radiant but hard-won, each step a testament to the woman she'd reclaimed. The center's glass walls reflected her image, a stark contrast to the trembling figure she'd been, cast out by David and Emily's venom. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and unease, the weight of her journey pressing against her chest. She'd built this empire for herself, for Isaiah, but the past was never far, its shadow lurking in the corners of her mind. As she greeted guests, women whose stories of struggle mirrored her own, Zaria felt a surge of purpose. Their eyes, filled with admiration, reflected the strength she'd fought to rediscover. She spoke to a young woman, her voice soft but firm. "You're enough, just as you are." The words were a vow, not just for her audience but for herself, a reminder that David's lies no longer held power. Yet her heart skipped when a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the crowd. David, his white skin paler now, his once sharp jawline softened by defeat. He was a security guard, his uniform ill-fitting, a far cry from the confident executive who'd once torn her apart. Zarya's breath caught, her hands trembling as she faced the man who'd called her worthless. Her emotions churned, anger, pain, but also a quiet pity for the shell he'd become. David's blue eyes, once cold, now flickered with something softer, almost broken. "Zarya," he said, his voice low, cracking with shame. "Can we talk?" The crowd parted, eyes turning to them, but Zarya stood tall, her heart a fortress. "What do you want, David?" she asked, her tone steady. Though her chest ached with the weight of old wounds, she felt Isaiah's presence in her mind, his tiny hand a symbol of why she'd fought so hard. "I was wrong," David said, his words halting, raw. "I let work pressure turn me into someone cruel. You're radiant now. I see that." His confession hung in the air, a plea that stirred Zarya's heart, but didn't sway it. She remembered his sneers, Emily's laughter, the suitcase tossed onto the lawn. "I was always radiant," she said, her voice cutting through his remorse like a blade. "I built this for Isaiah and myself, not for you. You chose to see me as nothing, but I was never nothing." Her words were a declaration, each one peeling away the shame he'd draped over her, her dark eyes blazing with truth. David's face crumpled, his hands fidgeting with his badge. "Emily left me," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I lost my job, my reputation. I see now what I threw away." Zarya's heart twisted, not with forgiveness, but with the realization that his regret was his own burden, not hers. She thought of Isaiah, his brown skin glowing like hers, his laughter a daily reminder of her purpose. "You made your choices," she said, her tone firm but not cruel. "I made mine. For my son, for me. You don't get to claim this now." She turned away, her heart lighter, the weight of his betrayal lifting like fog under sunlight. The crowd's murmurs faded as Zarya moved toward the stage, her resolve a fire that burned away the last traces of David's hold. She felt the eyes of her supporters, women who saw her as a beacon, and her chest swelled with pride. But another presence drew her gaze. Marcus Reed, standing quietly near the entrance, his green eyes warm with unspoken pride. Her heart fluttered, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, a rekindling of the love they'd shared under a Texas moon. He'd been her anchor, his faith in her a steady hand through her darkest days, yet she'd held back, needing to stand on her own before opening her heart again. Later, under the Houston night sky, Marcus found her on the center's rooftop terrace, the city's lights a glittering backdrop. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of magnolias, and Zarya's dark skin glowed under the stars, her presence a quiet power. "You were incredible today," Marcus said, his voice soft but fervent. "You faced him and didn't flinch." Zarya's smile was bittersweet, her heart still raw from the encounter. "It hurt," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But it also freed me. I saw him for what he is, small, broken, not my burden anymore." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I've loved you since we danced under the stars in college," he said, his words a confession that sent a shiver through her. "I see you now, Zarya, stronger, brighter than ever. Will you let me be part of your light?" Her heart raced, fear and longing warring within her. She'd been burned by love, scarred by David's betrayal, but Marcus's gaze held only truth, a love that asked nothing but to lift her up. She thought of Isaiah, of the life she was building, and felt the fear melt away, replaced by a certainty she hadn't felt in years. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Marcus knelt, pulling a simple ring from his pocket, its diamond catching the moonlight. "Marry me, Zarya," he said, his voice steady, a vow as much to her as to their shared past. Tears welled in her eyes, not of pain but of joy, and she nodded, her heart soaring. "Yes," she said again, louder, a declaration to the stars. They embraced, the city below a witness to their reunion, a love reborn from the ashes of her pain. The wedding came swiftly, a small, vibrant affair in a Houston garden, filled with close friends and the women Zaria had inspired. Isaiah, her brown-skinned toddler, toddled down the aisle, his curls bouncing as he carried the rings, his laughter a melody that filled Zaria's heart. She stood beside Marcus, her dark eyes shining, her curves proud, her spirit unbreakable. The vows they exchanged were a promise, not just of love, but of partnership, of building a future where Isaiah would know only light. Zaria felt her grandmother's presence, her voice whispering, "You're a star." She was, and she'd never dim again. Zaria Thompson stood at the edge of her Houston loft's window, the city's skyline a tapestry of lights that mirrored the fire in her heart. Isaiah, her brown-skinned son, giggled from his playpen, his tiny hands clutching a toy truck, his laughter a melody that wove through her soul. Her dark eyes, once shadowed by David's cruelty, now shone with a radiant pride, tempered by the scars of her journey. Zaria's radiance, her wellness platform, had become a global beacon, empowering Black women to embrace their worth. But it was her son, in her newfound love with Marcus, that anchored her. The memory of facing David, his regret a hollow echo, had freed her, but it was the promise she'd made to herself and Isaiah, to never dim her light, that drove her now. Her black skin glowed under the soft glow of the loft, a testament to the woman she'd become. The invitation to speak at a women's conference in Atlanta had come as a surprise, a call to share her story on a stage far beyond Houston's borders. Zaria felt a flutter of nerves, her heart racing with both excitement and the weight of her past. She sat on the loft's plush couch, Isaiah curled against her, his warmth a reminder of why she'd fought so hard. Her fingers traced his curls, her mind replaying the journey, from the house where David and Emily had torn her apart to the moment Marcus knelt under the stars, offering a love that lifted her. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a force, and Atlanta would hear her truth. The conference hall buzzed with energy, a sea of women, Black, white, young, old, waiting to hear her voice. Zaria stepped onto the stage, her presence commanding, her dark eyes sweeping the crowd. Her heart pounded, a mix of vulnerability and strength, as she gripped the podium. "I'm Zaria Thompson," she began, her voice steady but rich with emotion, a Black woman who was told her body, her skin, her very existence wasn't enough. The words hung heavy, her pain laid bare, but her chin lifted, her gaze unwavering. "I believed those lies once, let them break me. But I learned my worth is inherent, and so is yours." Her story poured out, raw and unflinching. She spoke of the mornings when David's insults had cut her soul, of Emily's sneers that made her feel invisible. She shared the terror of premature labor, the joy of holding Isaiah, his brown skin a mirror of her resilience. Her voice trembled as she described the betrayal, David's cold note, his absence, but it soared as she recounted her rise, building Zaria's radiance from a motel room, fueled by her grandmother's belief and Marcus's unwavering support. "I stood in front of a mirror," she said, tears glistening, "and saw not a victim, but a warrior. My black skin, my curves, my heart, they're my power, not my shame." The crowd leaned forward, some wiping tears, others nodding, their own stories reflected in hers. Zaria's chest swelled with purpose, her fear melting under the weight of their connection. "You don't need to change to be enough," she said, her voice rising, a clarion call. "Not your body, not your skin, not your story. You are enough right now." The applause thundered, a wave of affirmation that shook the hall, but Zaria felt it deepest in her heart, a validation of the woman she'd fought to become, a mother, a leader, a star. Backstage, Marcus waited, his green eyes shining with pride. He pulled her into his arms, Isaiah tucked between them, his laughter a bright note in the chaos. "You moved them," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You moved me." Zaria's heart fluttered, her love for him a steady flame, no longer shadowed by fear. She thought of their wedding, Isaiah toddling down the aisle, his curls bouncing as he carried their rings, a symbol of the family they'd built. Her emotions swirled, gratitude for Marcus, love for Isaiah, and a quiet peace with the woman she'd become. Zarya's platform grew beyond her wildest dreams, its reach spanning continents, with women sharing their stories of triumph over doubt. She founded the Isaiah Empowerment Fund, a lifeline for Black women escaping abuse, offering resources, counseling, and hope. Each letter she received, each woman who thanked her, was a brick in the legacy she was building, not just for herself, but for an Isaiah, for her grandmother, for every woman who'd ever felt less than enough. Her heart ached with a bittersweet joy, the pain of her past a shadow that only made her light shine brighter. At night, Zaria would sit with Isaiah, reading him stories under the loft's soft lights. His brown eyes, so like hers, sparkled with curiosity, and she'd whisper, "You're my star, just like I'm yours." She taught him to see people for their hearts, to value kindness over appearance, ensuring he'd grow into the kind of man Marcus was, supportive, unwavering, true. Her grandmother's words echoed, "Don't let anyone dim you." Zaria lived those words now, her black skin a badge of honor, her curves a celebration of her strength. David's name surfaced occasionally, a whisper of his downfall. He'd remarried, but his life was a shadow of what it had been, his regret a weight he carried alone. Zaria felt no malice, only a distant pity. She'd forgiven him, not for his sake, but for her own, to free herself from the chains of his cruelty. Her heart was too full of love, of purpose to hold on to hate. She'd heard Emily had moved on, chasing another fleeting dream, but Zaria didn't care. They were her past, not her future. One evening, as Zaria tucked Isaiah into bed, she stood at the loft's window, the Houston skyline a reminder of how far she'd come. Marcus joined her, his hand finding hers, their fingers entwining. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft. A vow. Zaria's heart swelled, her love for him a quiet certainty, rooted in the trust they'd rebuilt. She thought of her grandmother, whose small investment had given her freedom, and of Isaiah, whose laughter gave her purpose. Her journey from a woman broken by betrayal to one who lit up the world was complete, yet only beginning. Zaria turned to the audience in her mind, her voice carrying through the platform she'd built. "What would you do if someone tried to dim your light?" she asked, her words a challenge, a call to action. "Would you forgive them? Would you rise? Your worth is yours, unshakable, and your story is yours to write." She urged them to share their truths, to join her in breaking the chains of shame. Her dark eyes gleamed, her heart full, as she stood on the precipice of her legacy. A Black woman who'd turned pain into power, a mother who'd given her son a world of light. Zaria Thompson's journey from the ashes of betrayal to a radiant legacy echoes in every heart that dares to rise. Her story asks, would you forgive a David who dimmed your light? What does your worth mean to you? Share your thoughts below, for in our stories, we find strength together. Thank you for walking with Zaria, for feeling her pain and triumph. Your presence fuels this tale of redemption. Stay with us for more stories that ignite the soul. Until we meet again, keep shining unapologetically as Zaria did.